Hi there. 2023 was the centenary year for the Royal Scotsman, and on the 11th of March I went to Hayward Station, which was where the East Lancashire Railway were putting the Scotsman on display.
Between the four. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I'd sit there counting this morning. There's hundreds of pounds coming out. It was incredible that day. Really was. But there was four of us.
The empty bottles.
Yeah, there was the bottles
were selling
on
eBay.
Right.
Yeah. So, selling the beer at £5. Oh, right. And the empty bottles were on eBay for more than that. About £20. Right. And we were throwing things on. We didn't realise because they were local. It was a local brew.
Oh, right.
So we've still got beer.
Yeah.
But it's up at Bury. This platform's not licensed. So.
The local brew from where? From here?
Yeah, from Radcliffe.
Oh, Radcliffe.
From Radcliffe.
Oh, because there's a brewery.
From Brightside, yeah. Yeah, but it's from Brightside.
Right.
We've got quite a few of them.
What's your most popular item?
Here,
Yeah.
today, are probably the books.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Books. It is the beer if I have the beer. It's
Oh, yeah.
Beer. But the books are the most popular.
Yeah.
Everybody comments on the coal.
The coal. Oh, the bottles of coal.
What is it?
Good heavens.
Oh, yeah. See.
Hot frat cake.
Oh, is it?
Oh, look at this.
Yeah.
I'll have to take some of that for my grapes. I'll come back after we've been at the cab.
I'm not selling like any toys, but the adults seem to like the Meccano for themselves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not Meccano, but like Meccano.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
But the books, this one's the official from the museum, and this one's written by Ian works in our sheds,
All right.
and his brother's the head of the guards. So all these are signed and they're exclusive to this railway. Right. This one's wherever the Flying Scotsman goes.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, as I presume he's told you, the engine's always here. So it goes on its travels and it comes back here because it always needs battling.
Yeah.
The carriages, what we're studying now, are these the original carriages? Where we stood now?
They're not original to the Flying Scotsman, they're original.
Right, you didn't get
They
to
are
that bit.
original.
Yes,
They are original
but not
carriages,
right.
not to the Flying Scotsman, no. They're just part of our stock.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Which is why you've got wires from
Yes.
from Christmas and stuff.
Oh, yes.
That's what we use for decoration.
Ah.
Nothing technical.
Oh,
Right?
what that was for, right.
There's nothing technical with what we use for decorating for various events.
Because
we have
dining and stuff, don't they?
not on this
Not on
one.
this one, right, okay.
We do on these. We do like cream teas and things.
Right,
Not
okay.
just box cream tea. No, we have a special dining.
Right, I've seen that on the
dining
internet, yes.
carriages.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the first one's tonight.
Oh, is it? Right, and where's that one?
Here. They all go from Bury.
Onwards. Right.
And then, depending on which one you've booked, it goes from Bury to here, back to Bury up to Rottenstone
Right, okay.
and back.
Right.
It takes 2 or 3 hours. But it's the food. The food's well, the carriages are like Pullman carriages
Are they?
anyway,
Oh,
so
right, yeah.
they're first class.
Yes.
You know, like
Superb, yeah, yeah.
express
It's fine
type.
dining, isn't it?
They're orange express carriages, but the food is top in on TripAdvisor and all that over all the Manchester restaurants.
Are they? Yeah.
Just
So the
it's
chef
just
comes
the
on and
food
does,
alone.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's cooked on the
Is it on the train?
train.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, it's got an excellent
Yeah.
reputation. I just went.
Oh, remember these cabbages?
So you travelling along at about 80 miles an hour, something like that, between Scotland and England.
I climb up on these racks when I was a kid. Oh, we're going to go through the
At the
tender.
end of the train, on a normal train
Yeah.
or local, you wouldn't actually be able to do this because this is unique to flying Scotsman in the Air Force. So,
It's a little bit then.
Oh,
there's a hook at the end here.
I gum. Blimey.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then the other two go back down the tender, you see.
Yeah,
You just
the
release
relief ones.
Oh wow!
and it carries on.
Maybe 40 years else. Oh, jeez.
It's not as long as it is when it's running.
No, I bet it's not. No.
That's absolutely nothing.
No.
When it's going, you cannot see in there. Not
Was it glowing?
see like that much past there, and then it's just like looking at the sun. In there. Well,
And
you
if
don't
you-
look in because
if you
at
look at
night, if you look in, you look at all you see is stars. It's white. Or you do not look in there.
It's like looking
When
at
you're
the
firing
sun.
it, you know where you're going. You don't look in because you can't see it because it's just everything.
So every fireman go on and just throw it in.
No, well,
We just know where it.
you don't just throw it in. Trust me, there's a
throw
heart
it in.
to it.
Is it?
And you can see then there's like a tube. And you can see all around by doing that.
Right.
Even though it's all flame,
Yeah.
you just see like a round thing when you just deflect it like that, and you can see
You
where
know
you're
you're
missing.
in the right bit.
But if you get a hole in the fire, you can actually hear it. The whole thing starts vibrating. I remember that 1501, I got a hole in the fire and it's like, the whole thing's going.
Was it?
Yeah.
You put a lump of, put that there when it's working hard, and it'll suck the coal clean off.
Oh.
And that weighs about, some of them lumps weigh about nearly 10
I'm
pounds.
just going to say that. I'm expecting coal to
It's,
answer.
it should be that size.
Yeah, when you're at
Like
home.
all.
Yeah.
that's some
Massive,
big
that.
nuggets
It's
there,
only
aren't
at least the
they? Good
size of your
heavens,
fist.
yeah.
Right.
Or a bit bigger.
Wow.
If it gets too big, it's not as good.
Where does this coal come from now? Where did you get it from?
Colombia apparently.
Is it imported? Yeah.
Well, they don't want, you'd be very lucky to get, you can still.
That's probably ideal, isn't
That's
it?
the ideal size.
Well,
Yeah.
It's the surface area that you want
Yeah.
if it's really big, and we've actually
see-
had some.
You can see the actual layers
yeah,
in
yeah.
the coal, and what happens is, oh, you can see that one there, you can see like
There's like a
brighter
cauliflower.
bits in it.
Oh, I can, yeah.
Oh, that one there, like a cauliflower, like Gary says, in the middle that's just dropping apart at the minute. That's where the
Ah, yeah.
layers are all separating and the air can get to it and it burns.
It burns it.
If it's too big, and we've had a lot, literally that size,
Yeah.
no use because it can only burn around the outside. Where if it's
Oh,
breaking,
yeah.
broken up to
Yeah.
that, the surface area, there's a lot more burns.
Aye.
Yeah.
Never realised, yeah.
Oh, there's a bit of an art
Yeah,
form
there's
to
more
it.
to it than what you think.
You get a Welsh one, you get one lump there, and when it goes in there, it ends up twice the size. It swells up, breaks like that, like a cauliflower.
Yeah.
It can go twice. It gets to twice the size when it went in.
Is it?
That's a bit big.
Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah.
But again, you can see the layers. In it.
Yeah.
That's quite heavy. That'd be decent stuff. It's heavy.
So would normally that door be shut?
No, well,
Open
it
it.
depends. You use it like that to shove it in.
Well, can I stick my head out the window? This is a selfie stick, so I'm going to stick my head out the window.
Crack it
here.
up to get a bit of extra air into it. It burns all the black smoke. You don't do that. There's some guy in Ireland who did that.
Yeah.
Engine locked. His foot went in, went up, then came back down, trapped his foot. He's on the floor. He slipped.
Oh my
Can't
God.
get it out.
Wow.
So now you always use.
Always do that, yeah.
Something you've done, you just don't think, or you just use that to. Right. I'll use your hand because you won't have any skin on it.
Can we cook the breakfast on the...
Actually,
Still do that?
Put a bit of potato in there, couldn't you?
we get bacon, but it's paid for down there.
Yeah.
Right. I'll just show you the picture. I just showed it somebody earlier. This is what you do.
And a silly question, where's the steam coming out of? What's the
Usually 3, but you can have 4.
Right. And the driver would switch seats?
Nope.
No.
No,
He's there. He's done his
Driver's
the
seat.
drivers.
He's
He's
there.
very elitist.
Oh, is it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's captain of the ship. You
I'm
can just
captain of
shy.
the ship.
Gary's the fireman. Sorry, the driver. Sorry.
It's just like being the captain. Whatever you say, goes.
Is it?
The only thing you can't do, it's just it's like a captain of a ship, but you can't do marriages
Oh,
and deaths.
just in my marriage that then, that's fine. Whatever I say goes. That's right.
So you
It
would...
doesn't sound Flying Scotsman related. He's talking about marriages. I understand.
No, I'm sitting the boss is sat here.
Ah, right.
Right,
I've got
okay.
another group ready to come through.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
All right.
That's the water going in. That's the water going into the boiler.
See, man, down to the injector, squirt water, and it goes.
And you'll see it just rising up there.
In the boiler, and that has got to open the pump. It's got to open the valve, ramp them so it can spit back out.
Right. Okay, are we ready for the next
Yes,
group?
sorry, yeah.
Yes, that's fascinating. Thank you very much.
Very much, yeah. Thanks.
Very good.
Pleasure meeting you.
All right.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah. Just make sure your feet go
Oh,
on
it's
there.
all right.
And I won't get all the something, just to be on the safe side.
Oh, it's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah. Good stuff.
4472 was named Flying Scotsman in 1924.
It is still the most famous steam locomotive in the world.
In 1934, she reached the first official 100 miles an hour on rails.
This locomotive is now just approaching 100 years old. It's inevitable that it's got all those stories attached to it.
41 years ago, I saved the locomotive from getting scrapped.
Everybody's got a magic moment to talk about.
We put my granddad's ashes in the smoke box of the Flying Scotsman.
I proposed to my fiancée on the Flying Scotsman.
I always said that I had the best years out of Flying Scotsman, and Flying Scotsman had the best years out of me.
Flying Scotsman's a special train, and you finally get to see it, and it's like, oh my word, it's real.
The whistle as it comes through Doncaster station every time, it's moving.
Everybody wants to come on the footplate, everybody wants to come in cabin, everybody wants to come and have the photograph taken with it.
Coming up on its 100th anniversary, it just makes it very, very special.
To me, it's like greeting an old friend when I see him.
They've just disappeared out of my sight, so they'll be at least another 20 minutes late. Somebody's sitting down. So for 20 minutes I can talk to you about the story of the Flying Scotsman, which basically started in 1918 after the war. If you don't know, none of you remember the First World War, I'm pretty sure. Even I don't remember the First World War. But you can imagine, having seen films and so on, there were some very, hang on, somebody else is just... Anybody else, John?
I've just got two people heading this way from the cafe. I'll just check to see whether they're 130s.
Oh, send them down. I've made a start anyway. Right, okay. In the period after the war, Britain was coming out of a very difficult time. There've been quite a few technological developments. The tank was invented. That is why we won the war. So there was big engines, but not many people have got a car. There's probably less than 1,000 cars in the whole country. There's a lot of people got bicycles, still got horses and carts. There was trams running around most of the big towns. But if you wanted to go a long distance, basically the only way you could do it was on a train. And the trains were ramshackle old things, mostly made of wood, the carriages. The locomotives were all sorts of different sorts, left over from before the First World War, which was 6 or 8 years earlier, and a lot of developments were taking place just after the war. War is really good for pushing progress in engineering development. Lots of good things come out of the war, would you believe? Better engines, better ability to fly. Before the First World War, nobody went in the air. At the end of the First World War, there was planes flying all over the place. Things like that happened. And the railways in this country were under the ownership of small companies, or big companies in some cases. There was one company called LNER, London and North Eastern Region, who ran up the eastern side of the country, from sort of King's Cross up to Lincolnshire, to Grantham and York and Newcastle, and even on to Scotland. They had the eastern side of Scotland. So they were the LNER at that time. Balancing them out was the LMS, or the Midland Railway as it was called in those days, which ran from Euston to Birmingham to Crewe to Manchester, Preston, and up to Carlisle, and the western side of Scotland. There was then other ones in other places, but they're all individual railways. And the LNER one had a train leaving every day at 10 o'clock in the morning, going up the eastern side of the country, which they called the Scotch Flyer. Don't think it had a head for it, it's just, we know it's a Scotch Flyer, that's the one that, it went at 10 o'clock. For most of its time, it got as far as York after about 5 hours, and had to stop for an hour or so, because the carriages have got a door on that side, and a door on that side, and a couple of bench seats. And if you've been sitting here for 5 hours, you probably want to go to the toilet. And you certainly want to go and get something to eat. So they used to stop in York Station for about an hour, whilst the passengers sorted themselves out. And they would change the engine over for the other half of the trip. It was 398 miles from London to Edinburgh. and so nearly a 400-mile trip, but it was taking about 9 hours, nearly up 40 miles an hour on average. So the train was going along at about 60 miles an hour, but it stopped for an hour in York while they changed engines. After a little while, they managed to get the train going non-stop to Newcastle, but that was about as far as the driver and the fireman could stomach it, because they had to work for, well, a couple of hours before the train got ready in the morning. Our driver, Gary, if you talk to him today, he probably started about 5:30 this morning, and we aren't actually going anywhere. But he had to get the engine prepped, ready to come out. So he was in there checking all the joints, putting oil in the right places, and Steve, who was the cleaner, I don't know fireman is today, but Steve's the cleaner, and he was polishing it all up, making it look nice. And they start work at 5:30 in the morning, even though they weren't leaving Bury till about 9 o'clock. It took them a couple of hours at least to get it ready. So the fastest trains from London to Edinburgh went as far as Newcastle before they had to stop and have a change of drivers. Nigel Gresley was the man who was in charge of the LNER engineering side. You've heard of Nigel Gresley? He's smiling down here, yes, you've heard of him. And he wasn't Sir Nigel at that point, he was just common and garden Nigel. And he was determined that his railway, the LNER, was going to do better than the Midland Railway, who also had a 10 o'clock train going to Edinburgh. And the 10 o'clock train went up through the Birmingham area, up to Preston, on to Carlisle, and up to Edinburgh. And the 10 o'clock train went from King's Cross up through Peterborough and Doncaster, York, and so on. And there was a race. They called it the Race to the North. If you go on the internet and look for Race to the North, you'll find out these two trains were desperate to get to Edinburgh first. And the one that got to the junction just south of Edinburgh got the preference to go into the platform in the station, as long as it was in LNER one, because they were in charge of the signal box. So if the two trains were coming pretty much close together, the signalman would let the LNER one go through first. Or even if it was only 5 minutes that they had to wait, the Midlands Railway, their train had to wait longest. So the LNER had a bit of a privilege to get through first, but if they'd been delayed a long while, then they had to let the Midland one through. And this went on for a few years, and Nigel Gresley was still determined to get a faster train, and he's thinking the only way to do it really is to have a non-stop journey from King's Cross all the way up to Edinburgh. 398 miles, which was unheard of in those days. And the biggest stumbling block, he actually invented a locomotive that could do this, but the biggest stumbling block was the driver and the fireman. No way they could work in that environment, shoveling coal for 7 hours, 8 hours, whatever it was, all the way up there. They needed to have a break. He did think about them getting to climb over the coal and down the ladder into the first carriage, but thought that might be a bit dangerous, that sort of thing. So he came up with the idea of having a tunnel through the tender. The tender is the bit behind the locomotive. I'm not allowed to tell jokes about the tender. No, it's the lady behind you, I think. Don't you worry.
It's me.
The ball reaching for their
My
phones.
son, sorry.
And I have to tell you, I've done this talk 7 times each day for the last 5 days, and half the times the phone's gone off. I should have told you to turn your phone off. But one of the times was mine. So, this idea of building a tunnel through the tender was Nigel Gresley's, and he was cogitating, he was thinking about it one day when he just had his lunch, and he got his dining room table chairs and he put them against the wall, and he got his family, his wife and kids to walk through. Oh, there's plenty of room in it, push them a bit closer, and they walked through until he ended up with a gap that they could just squeeze through, and it was 18 inches wide and 5'6" tall. I am a perfect fit for the tunnel. If I stand there like that, my shoulders are just touching it and my head is brushing the top. So if you're taller than me, you're going to have to bend down. If you're bigger than me, you're going to have to turn sideways. And if you're broader than me, you ain't going through it, right? Okay? So actually, you're going to get the chance to go through it. You don't have to go through it if you don't want to. We've had several people, one gentleman and 3 ladies, the last 4 days before this, who looked at one of them and told I don't want to go through it. It's quite claustrophobic. It's a long tunnel, about half the length of this carriage. It's not very big. It has been painted white, and we have put an electric strip lighting. But in the original instance, there's no light in it. And just imagine what it was like for the driver and finder to come out of the first carriage, climb up the 2 steps, go into the tunnel, and the train's rocking along at 70 or 80 miles an hour, and they're going to go through. By the time they got onto the footplate, their shoulders would be bruised to hell because they're banging on either side of the carriage. And they couldn't see what they're doing, probably back the head on it. There is a little hook where they put some of their tools at the far end, so just be careful if you raise the left wrist and arm might catch it on there. So you're going to get a chance to go through there in a little while if you don't want to do. You can go through, you can run through there, but everybody else is going to have to duck or turn sideways or whatever. If you don't want to go through, then you can walk along the platform and climb up on the steps. That's the way. So in the locomotive Flying Scotsman did its first ever earning of any money on the 24th of February 1923. 100 years ago. The 24th of February happens to be also my birthday. But I'm not 100 years old. Flying Scotsman was 100 years old a couple of weeks ago, and to celebrate it, last Tuesday, a week ago, it was driven up to Edinburgh on the Tuesday afternoon and evening. It arrived about 10 o'clock at night, went to a siding at Joppa Strait, and then Wednesday morning it was taken into Waverley Station and they had a birthday party for it. They had cake and balloons and a piper playing a tune, and they all sang happy birthday to it. There was a couple of speeches and it came back again. And it went up there for basically a day, all the way to Edinburgh, 200 miles each way, just to celebrate its birthday. And if I tell you that whilst it's sitting in the platform here, it's going to burn a ton of coal, costing £440. I don't know how much it used going to Edinburgh and coming back, just for a birthday party. You know, quite a bit I would have thought. But that was what happened last week. Scotsman spent a lot of time in our shed in Bury, and came out of the shed in February this year, having been repainted and having a lot of work done to it over the last 4 months. Most people don't know that it really lives in Bury more than some of the people who live in Bury. It spends a lot of time in the shed being repaired by a gentleman called Ian Riley. Anybody heard of Ian Riley? Yeah? He's a modern day, sort of, George Stephenson. He owns 3 steam engines and he repairs steam engines for anybody. And he is at the moment looking after Flying Scotsman, mainly in our shed, but a lot of the work he does is in that building over there. That big building is his works, but there's no railway line to that. So he has to do all the work down our sheds, and if he's got any machining to do, he takes it on a lorry up here, puts it onto his lathes and other equipment, and does the work there. So the wheels he can take up there and work in there. He has actually, you can take a lorry on the back of a lorry into that place, and he's got a machine which you put the lorry on it, and then it blows air underneath, a bit like a hovercraft, and it blows itself up till it's about 3 or 4 millimetres off the ground. And I'm not joking, I'm told you could push one finger and you could push a locomotive across the workshop to a different position, rather than trying to twist it with a crane and so on. He uses this lift, but that's beside the point. So on February the 24th, 1927, Scotsman came out, and on May the 2nd, 1928, the train, the 10 o'clock train from King's Cross to Edinburgh turned into a non-stop journey. It was something special. Gresley wanted everybody who went on that train to think they were doing something different. A bit like going on Concorde. Do you know what Concorde is? Okay, Concorde was a super duper, very fast aeroplane that went from London to America, London to New York, and Washington. In half the time of any other trains, it was that planes, it was that fast, and it went to South Africa as well, I think. But it made a big bang as it went through the sky, and everybody didn't want it over there. If it came over the top of Manchester, you heard this bang as it went over, you'd think the world was falling down. So it would only fly over the sea. So it went to America and it went to South Africa, but it was over the sea all the time, so that nobody could actually hear this big sonic bang, as they call it. Anyway, the train that Gresley's team designed had got new carriages, 8 carriages for the northern journey and 8 carriages for the southern journey. The best carriages anybody had ever seen at all. They even had a corridor in so that people could walk up and down. There was a chef who was cooking food, so you could have a meal on board. There was a film show to entertain you, and there was even a hairdresser, so you could have your hair done. It was a bit like going on a cruise. There used to be a very famous ship called Queen Mary that went from London to New York, or from Southampton to New York, and people wanted to go on that because it was something special. The train that ran non-stop from May 1928 was so special they gave it a new name. The train they called the Flying Scotsman. Instead of being the Scotch Flyer as they had before, it was now the Flying Scotsman. The train was. And there was 4 locomotives capable of pulling this train non-stop from London to Edinburgh. One of them was this engine at the front, which at that time, I think it was 4492, but it hasn't. I've just seen a picture of it with the number 502 on the side and 103 on the other side. And I have seen E103 on it. It's now 60103. It's had lots of different numbers and been painted different colours. But at that time, it was the locomotive chosen. So they decided that the Flying Scotsman train was going to be pulled by Flying Scotsman, the locomotive. A little confusing, but just another engine that they accidentally called Flying Scotsman. And it was the train. For 40 years, it was the train, the carriages, that were important. I want to go from London to Edinburgh. I'll go on the Flying Scotsman, the train. Doesn't matter what engine's at the front, as long as it goes non-stop and goes as quick as it can. And for 40 years, that was all that was important. The locomotive carried on pulling this train every day, backwards and forwards, along with its other mates out of the same class. They were called A3 engines, and there was quite a few of them built. I've forgotten how many altogether, but quite a few of them built. And they pulled this train non-stop, and the driver and fireman go through the corridor somewhere near York and swap over with the other ones. And when they got, until Gresley decided he wanted to go even faster and better, so he designed another locomotive called the A4. You're a good lad, you know it all, aren't you? Can you tell me the most famous A4 of them all?
Mallard.
Mallard it is, yes. Mallard is in the Railway Museum in York. There's another example of the A4 somewhere else. Do you know where that is?
Canada?
Well, yeah, there is one. There is one in Canada, but there's one about 4 miles away from where we are now. That's the one, yes. It's in my shed, or not my shed, our museum down in Bury. About for another month, and it's going to go. So if you don't go down there quick, you'll miss it. And you'll probably never see it again, because it's going to Scotland, and nobody goes to Scotland, you see. So he designed the A4s. In 1938, they took over the non-stop trips, and Flying Scotsman and his brothers out of the other set of the trains, they carried on running fast trains, but they would stop somewhere, and they didn't need the tenders. The tenders were taken off and put behind the A4s. There was 18 of these tenders built altogether, and to my knowledge, there's only 4 of them exist at the moment. Scotsman's got one, Union South Africa's got one, another locomotive called Sir Nigel Gresley, which looks like Mallard, has got one, and there's one in the National Railway Museum just for exhibit. And there may be others, but I only know about those 4. And in 1934, Flying Scotsman was the first steam engine in the world to do 100 miles an hour officially. There had been another one called the City of Truro, or Western Region Loco, going down a hill somewhere near Exeter, with the firemen pedalling like mad and the wind behind them, went down the hill, and the driver went, "Hey, we're doing 100 miles an hour here, look." But that wasn't taken as being an official speed. So just the crew claimed they'd done 100 miles an hour. But the Flying Scotsman actually did it. It had a dynamometer carriage which measured the speed accurately. So it definitely did 100 miles an hour in 1934. It was another record breaker in the 1980s in Australia when it went 440 miles non-stop, towing 2 tenders behind it full of water. There's not a lot of water in Australia, you see. So they had 2 tenders full of water, and it went 440 miles non-stop. And obviously they would have changed the crew over while they were doing that. It was in Australia for a trade fair to try and sell some of the British products. They should have done that after Brexit, you know, it might have come out a bit better if they sent it around Europe or another train. In 1939, unfortunately, we had another war in this country with Germany. We didn't seem to like Germany in those days, and they painted all the locomotives. Certainly, Scotsman got painted black so that it wasn't so obvious from above that there was an engine down there. And it stayed in its black all the way through the war for about 6 years. And it had the number E103, which I think stands for Eastern Region number 103. But it had other numbers, as I said. And then at the end of the war, it's painted back into dapple green, but wasn't used on the express trains from London to Edinburgh much more. It was transferred instead to the Great Central Railway from Marylebone to Rugby, Leicester, Nottingham, Sheffield and Manchester, and was based in Manchester for a while and in Leicester for the express trains on that line. And then finally in 1967 the British Railways Board said, no more steam trains on our railways, all these locos are going to have to go, and we're going to scrap them all, including all of these, like that one Flying Scotsman thing. And Alan Pegler says, I've got £1 million, can I buy it for about 780,000 you pay for it, but I want to be able to run it on excursions, but we're having no more trains. Well, I'll give you 780,000 if I can do it on the main line. So they agreed to that. So the only one train that was not banned, was not banned for going on the railway was Flying Scotsman, and that could run steam trains on. Initially, it was on lines that didn't have overhead wires because they were scared stiff that the fireman would climb on the coal and electrocute himself. But that's not proved to be a problem afterwards. So Scotsman ran for Alan Pegler for a while, but I'm afraid you're not going to hear all the whole of the story now. Would you three like to come and look at the footplate? Yes. If you